Well, the last few videos in this series have been a little heavy, as have the last several months of 2017. So I thought it would be nice to just take a break, relax, and have a look back at a year in history where a lot of other stuff just so happened to happen, but it was a long time ago, so we don't really have to deal with it. With that in mind, here are 5 history-making things that happened in 1927. Number 1, modern cosmology was born. 1927 was a big year for science. Werner Heisenberg first proposed his uncertainty principle. The Fifth Solvay Conference met in Brussels, where Albert Einstein argued with Heisenberg and Niels Bohr over quantum mechanics. Biologist Raymond Pearl published The Biology of Superiority, an attack on the then widely accepted science of eugenics. And Belgian priest and astronomer Georges Lemaitre first published his hypothesis of the primeval atom, which proposed that the universe was expanding and therefore must have originated at some point in the past rather than having existed eternally in its present state. A proposal that formed the basis of what we know today as the Big Bang Theory. Number 2, Philo drew the line. In 1927, radio was the dominant form of mass media, but there were indications that it wouldn't be that way forever. Significant events in the world of radio that year included the British Broadcasting Corporation commencing operations, Canada making its first nationwide broadcast, NBC broadcasting the Rose Bowl from coast to coast for the first time, and the Blue Network, which eventually became the American Broadcasting Company, debuting. But the real history was made by a 21-year-old inventor in San Francisco named Philo Farnsworth, who used a device he created and patented called an image dissector tube to generate an image of a straight line. Might not seem like such a big deal when I describe it that way, but today that event is remembered as the birth of electronic television. Number 3, Mr. Blair moved to London. Now, don't think that just because this was the year TV as we know it was invented, that 1927 wasn't also a momentous year for the good old-fashioned book. Agatha Christie published her first Miss Marple story. Virginia Woolf published To the Lighthouse. Arthur Conan Doyle published his final collection of Sherlock Holmes short stories. In Germany, Hermann Hesse published Der Steppenwolf. In France, the final volume of Marcel Proust's landmark novel À la recherche du temps perdu, best known in English as Remembrance of Things Past, was published. And Eric Blair, an officer in the Indian Imperial Police who had returned home to England after contracting dengue fever in Burma, resigned from the Imperial Police and moved to London to become a writer. Today, he's better known by his nom de plume, George Orwell. Number 4, son of Baltimore bartender hits balls real good. Sports. This was also an area where there were significant happenings during 1927. World heavyweight boxing champion Gene Tunney defeated Jack Dempsey at Soldier Field in Chicago in what would come to be known as the Battle of the Long Count. The United States defeated Great Britain in the first ever Ryder Cup. The Chicago American Giants won their second consecutive Negro League World Series, defeating the Bacharach Giants 5-3. The New York Yankees, powered by one of the most feared batting lineups in the history of the game, nicknamed Murderers Row, won 110 regular season games, were never out of first place, and won the World Series with a 4-game sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the most legendary member of Murderers Row, Babe Ruth, hit 60 home runs during the 1927 regular season, a record that would stand for 34 years. Damn Yankees. Number 5, movies found their voice. Now, before I get too far into this last bit, I just want to acknowledge that 1927 was the year Charles Lindbergh became the first person ever to pilot an airplane solo, non-stop across the Atlantic Ocean. It was one of the great achievements in human history. It changed the world, and I couldn't fit it in anywhere else, so I am mentioning it here. His plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, is in the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and you should all go see it if you've never been, because it's amazing. There. Now let's talk about movies. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was founded, and there could hardly have been a better year for it. 1927 was one of the most outstanding years in film history. Fritz Lang's Metropolis, F.W. Murnau's first Hollywood film, Sunrise, The Lodger, which launched the directorial career of Alfred Hitchcock, It, which catapulted Clara Bow to superstardom as the first It Girl, Abel Gance's epic Napoleon, Cecil B. DeMille's King of Kings, Wings, which would go on to win the first Oscar for Best Picture. All of these films premiered in 1927. And so did the story of a young man from a proud Jewish family who runs away from home to chase his dream of becoming a jazz singer. It was called, well, The Jazz Singer, and it was the first feature-length movie released with a synchronized soundtrack that included not only music and sound effects, but singing and speech. The success of The Jazz Singer signaled the end of the era of silent film. By the end of the 1920s, talkies were the standard, and the world would never be the same. But then again, there was a lot of that going around in 1927. The hardest part is picking only 5. Catch you next time. Hey folks, hope you found that one worthwhile. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks for watching.